Welcome to HumBot, your podcast where we talk about application of AI agents in business environments. You'll hear from professionals who are builders, buyers, users, and thought leaders operating with AI agents at scale. In today's conversation, we will focus on what does it mean to build a product in and for the agentic AI world. We'll also discuss what does it mean to commercialize products with enterprise customers and what adoption journeys are we observing from enterprise buyers. To do that, I have two phenomenal speakers today. They're part of an organization which is Iris.ai. And it is my great pleasure and delight to introduce the CTO and the CRO of Iris.ai, Victor and Steven. Victor, Steven, thank you for joining us. Can I hand it to you for an intro?
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, Sanjeev. My name is Victor Botev, and I'm the CTO and founder of Iris.ai. I have been with the company since the beginning, and my background is technical as a CTO, like a software engineer, AI researcher, and then CTO.
Great. Thank you for having us first, Sanjeev. My name is Steven Fung. I'm CRO of Iris.ai. I've been background in working in analytics and AI for the past couple of decades. So super excited to be here, just sharing what I'm seeing over the course of the year from the era of big data now in terms of artificial intelligence and the changes that we're observing across the industry. And thank you for having us.
100%. And thank you for joining, because agentic AI is very topical as a term. Mm-hmm. But then I think the topics and conversations have shifted from pilots to enterprise adoption. And I think that's where we'll probably focus a bit of our time. So maybe if we could start with yourself, Victor. Iris.ai is not new to the frame. You've been around for a few years.
Yeah, that's correct. We actually started in 2015, way before the generative AI era. At that time, we were obsessed with, interestingly, similar problems that people have today. But maybe we were a little bit too early. I mean, one of the issues that we saw in the world at that time is that there is a lot of information, a lot of knowledge produced, but very little of it, only a small fraction was used to make critical decisions, to create innovative products. And especially when it comes to enterprise, a lot of the decisions was, in our terms, made a little bit ad hoc, because if you don't have the whole information, all the knowledge at the right time, then you're obviously missing out on some stuff. And that's how we kind of started Iris.ai. We started first tackling research and academia because we were kind of close to that. And then I gradually moved towards the enterprise world and see exactly the same kind of problems in the enterprises with their data, with the the same inabilities to utilize all the knowledge that the enterprises have at the right moment. And I think with this generative AI revolution, if we can call it, it actually opens a lot of doors to do that in a new way and much more scalable than it was possible back in 2015.
Indeed. So you kind of lived through the technology hype cycles and sort of established something that's, as you said, timing seems right, customers are adopting, and you're learning. And maybe, Steven, if you could help us understand, how do you demystify the positioning of Iris.ai amidst all this hype? There's just so much going on.
Well, one thing for sure, and just to add on what Victor is saying is, I joined the team over 5 months ago. I learned about that. Wow, they've been actually doing indexing and embedding for the past 10 years, even before the time of generative AI, right? For anybody that has been working this space, that is our kind of a secret sauce. There's a place for us. So essentially, one of the core main value propositions are really twofold, right? One is really about how do we extracting kind of all the core data sets, any type of data sets, different formats and so forth? Because as Victor's mentioned, originally we started off actually helping researcher to accelerate the value, in terms of discovery, drug discovery or material science and so forth. Essentially, we already looked into a lot of deep data set. Doesn't matter, it's graph and chart. So that's why part of that capability of our tech stack is actually surfacing that deep tech and be able to apply to connect in any type of structure, unstructured format in different graph and charts into something that's unified, can be usable. And I guess answer exactly to your question is that many people says the same thing, right? Unstructured, structured data, but when it comes to reality, not that many players that actually could do as well as we do in a more agentified way.
Yeah, indeed. And you kind of started off saying indexing and embedding. Those are the most important problems for agentic AI foundations. Yes. And Iris has been on it for 10 years.
Definitely. Yes. I mean, I would actually maybe want to do a short step back in that journey and say that because we started quite early, we actually lived through like several, waves of improving the technology. And then we had several, let's call them aha moments when we realized, right now everyone is talking about this, and this is now ready for real adoption. Like embeddings, for example, is something that we are playing since the very beginning. Like our first product was like a semantic search engine, which allows you to find research articles related to your topic. And it was similarly based on embeddings, the current state of embeddings at that time. And then when the whole like generative AI boom happened and people suddenly start talking about hallucination and RAG, we were like, but we have been doing RAG for, I don't know, like 5-6 years now. So this must be the moment to actually push more in this angle. And maybe a second thought on that is related to the thing that, so because we were so close to research, and in research, there are in many situations problems that are not solved yet. And you don't have the definite answer. But what you want to know is that with every new release, every new deployment, you're improving. You're getting closer to the target. And what we realized is that, and we adopted one thing from research, is in order for that to happen, you have to be able to evaluate, are you moving forward or are you moving backwards? And I think that's still something that's kind of missing in the agentic AI. One of the key reasons why adoption is still difficult, but definitely a lot of things are moving on. But yeah, throughout these years, we have been focusing also on developing metrics to evaluate the results of language models that are tied to the desires of the customers and to the problems that we see. So I think that's like the second thing that we have as differentiator a little bit, because having the ability to know with each and every action that you take, are you moving forward or backward? It has helped us a lot to develop the use cases for the clients.
Indeed. And so Google Deep Research did a bit of research on both of you and Iris in preparation to help my preparation. So that's another agent at play. And something that stood out was Deep Research flagged in the briefing pack the technical presentations that potentially you've done, Victor, over the years, and the focus on evaluation and governance, not just the core technology, but evaluation and governance areas. So if I kind of loosely coined the term trust layer, would you think that's what you shifted focus towards at some point in this journey?
So that's an interesting topic again. Like, because it's not some, I mean, interesting thing is that it's not something that we purposefully built in order to put it in front of clients. It was something that we needed internally in order to move the products forward. I mean, throughout those years, like before ChatGPT, there was like a very steep adoption barrier, which was hard to tackle. And we tried several things, including building this trust layer. And when people started looking more open towards AI, and now with the boom of agentic workflows, then these things kind of seem to be the cornerstone to finally remove this adoption barrier. So how did we thought about this internally in a way is that we need to believe that this technology will reach the point when it's going to be adopted. I mean, we started as a deep tech company. We knew that technology is 10 years away before it gets adopted. We wanted to have something to motivate ourselves as well. And that was this trust layer. But the reality is that the clients, they need the same. They need to see this motivation that even if the technology doesn't solve the problem immediately right now, it's the best investment for the near future. I think that's how I think about this whole trust.
I mean, that's amazing. It's kind of your experiential learnings driving you to move in a certain direction. And I think I completely relate to this based on our experiences in HumBot. I think enterprise adoption is a function of trust, not a function of technology, not a function of even the people who kind of represent you as an organization. It's trust on the agentic reasoning and actions. And that's a big part.
Yeah, and I can even give one very simple example related to the whole RAG thing. I mean, people started talking about RAG and all the benefits that you get from retrieval and how you put this knowledge into the model and you put instructions, let's follow this, use the information from the context. But then what people realize, okay, so it limits hallucination to some extent, but not fully. And at this stage, we are so we need a metric that measures if the answer is generated based on the context or based on the parametric knowledge, because that can help us evaluate when to reiterate, how to make more improvements, in what direction, and so forth. I mean, this is kind of, in a way, how we operate to constantly improve this trust layer. Because, I mean, you're completely right. I mean, enterprises, in many situations, they make decisions based on trust. Having an ability to show how things really work is a fundamental layer of building the trust, in my view.
Exactly. And it's not just about quoting the terms as we quoted. It's also looks like you're able to back that trust layer up with very specific metrics that enterprise buyers are willing to accept as a metric for action. So which is phenomenal, I think. So clearly the head start you had for 10 years is clearly helping you there, because we see a lot of products out there competing with us, or our customers quote to us products that are fairly loose. They call it wrappers on generic LLMs, which probably don't do much. Now, if we kind of amplify this, so there is a trust layer, but then the future enterprise problems require orchestration of multiple agents over time. And so maybe, Steven, if we can just bring you in, there is a bit about the product, which is kind of, which we'll talk about. But from a positioning of the set of suites and products that Iris.ai has, how do you go into a customer conversation? So obviously you can talk about trust layer as a foundational element, but then do you say you support multi-agent architectures, siloed architectures? How does the initial conversation happen?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So maybe I'll start with kind of more the commercial, at least the conversation we're having. Maybe have Victor dive into the actual architecture itself, I think. So, but first is obviously what we do. I just want to set the context. Where we play, essentially, we're not replacing the data bricks or the data foundation layer, right? Essentially, we're just that layer that sits on top of the data infrastructure, right? We're getting the data ready, could be consolidated, or what we call it the unification platform, to work efficiently with LLMs, with the highest standard and quality. So essentially what it does is that a lot of the customers, I mean, including some of the latest, MIT report and whatnot, is saying that 95% of the POC failed. Yes, you could argue that the sample size who they're interviewing may have a questionable, but the fundamental foundation is still the same. It's like a lot of the customers still not able to actually extract all these data sets across different systems. That's why even when I started the big data era, it helps to get all the data together, but at the same time, it's also introducing a lot of big problems that people are facing. So when it comes down to building AI, you have to have that right structured data to feed like the whole embedding piece, right, into the model to be effective. So that's why part of a lot of the core value proposition that we see is that getting the data ready, right, in using our agentic tool to get it in, across different type of data sources into an area into an environment that they could actually start consuming, understanding the data. Then obviously, with a lot of the AI teams, they leverage as it's just simply API call, having whatever the application is built on top. So essentially, what we do is just we're that middle layer foundations that work with LLMs. So then a lot of the enterprise customers could actually build effectively. So that's definitely one angle of how we're positioning our product overall.
Very interesting. Yeah, because if you look at the agentic world, the conversations have moved from data availability pipelines to really certainty of outcomes. People want agents to deliver. In that journey, giving the right context to agents at the right moment is probably the differentiator. And to do that, you have to have a very strong hold on knowledge extraction from underlying tools and systems, or systems of record, if we say. So I think it's clear, at least in my mind, where your positioning is, and probably for enterprise buyers, this counts its weight in gold, because they can make all the underlying technology investments, they can make all the surrounding business process ideation investments to have use cases, but agents to act need the right context, real time, with precision.
And just to add on a little bit about like POCs, right? Because let's put it that way. The fundamental problem is not about the technology, because the technology is actually quite good. But it's like, what are you feeding into it, right? And a lot of times if you have 6 to 7 weeks to do a POC or pilot, you need to, the real value is actually getting the right data set to drive an expected outcome for that particular department. And a lot of times, if like traditionally, I mean, as you and I work in the tech space, proving a technology is actually not the problem. It's actually getting the whole package and prove it back to the business. And that's kind of the one area that I see is not a lot of people are doing that well. Yeah.
I want to add now a little bit from technical perspective, some of the real tangible issues we see with the data. I mean, because so the technology gives us the possibility to extract information from unstructured knowledge or unstructured sources like PDFs, Excel files, PowerPoints, whatever. It also gives us the possibility to get information from structured knowledge as well, databases, like already pre-built indexes and so forth. But the reality is that this data is heterogeneous, and so when you feed it to the agent, you need to do a lot of things that we're used to do when we train models. Like you need to normalize it. You need to make sure. So because, for example, if you get just one number from an SQL database, and at the same time, like 5 chunks with a lot of text from, let's say, a PDF document, you see like the disproportionality, right? So you need to somehow re-emphasize that this is another source, what it contains inside, what is this data exactly. So this kind of unification of the representation of the data is something that people are, I think, still overlooking a bit, and something that we focus a lot on, because at the end of the day, you need to know a little bit about how the LLMs operate in order to be able to feed these things correctly. But this kind of normalization and representation is really important to get the right results. Because in one case, the answer will be in one of the chunks. In another case, will be in the SQL result. Sometimes could be mixed. So you need this thing to be visible to the model. If you just put one number and one sentence, and then you have another 20,000 tokens that are talking about something else, it's very likely that the model will be confused and would not get the right answer. So that I think is one kind of very, very tangible thing related to the data. And I also think that as with any kind of changes in technologies, we will need to rethink a little bit some of the aspects of our data, how we organize it. A lot of it is made for humans to operate with it, to create pipelines, to orchestrate. Now it's going to be changed to AI agents. So some changes will be there as well in regards to the data, especially the structured one.
Yeah. And I think if I can loosely summarize, so even what you just said goes way granular to define the word context. So there's so much enrichment required to feed the right context based on how the LLM operates in real time for the right. And that needs to be supported with an injection approach. That right context needs to be supported with the right prompt at the right time. Do you think this is the differentiation between endless pilots and successful scale outcomes?
I think that there are two faults. That definitely again, like coming from machine learning and training of models, we had this saying garbage in, garbage out. So it's really important what you put in at the end of the day, because if you don't think about how this is going to be used by the model, then you cannot expect tangible results. You might get some results right, but it's very likely that that would not scale well. So that's thing number one. And thing number two, I'm gonna again like open the discussion around evaluation in the sense that after the generative AI boom, people still were using the old NLP metrics to understand the answers, and that's not practical. So one of the directions where we go further and we do our own research in is mechanistic interpretability, or interpreting how the model processed your query in order to understand. I mean, if you instruct it now to be like a nuclear physicist and not like a general physics teacher, let's say, does it actually go into these parameters that are about nuclear physics? So trying to understand, did we manage to navigate it in the right direction? And what was the reason for that? Was it the instruction we gave in the prompt? Was it the examples? Was it the context? That's how we came with this metric about context grounding that I mentioned before. Mm-hmm. So understanding these kind of things can help also a lot in measuring the right things. Because, I mean, what you put in is definitely important, but also knowing how to change what you put in is also important in order to get things right.
Okay. And just to add on this is the way I think the data aspect is obviously in our view is low hanging fruit, right? Just get that data pipeline ingestion, just get it ready as one. And to build on what Victor is saying is, like, for example, like regulatory type of customers that we have, like work in telco and manufacturing and so forth, they are very sensitive of what to expose. Like, for example, if you ask something about the banking and finance, just like the examples that Victor gave, I mean, yes, you could have a really deep tax consultant to talk about a subject, but for the end users, they may not be as deep. How do you translate that deep information into something that is readable? So that's why back to the Victor saying is that the beauty of that next phase is that how could we build more, like a much more personalized based on that individual? And for us, by doing that, is actually understanding and manipulating the logic behind it, the neurons actually behind the model. What is the reasoning? Why is it exactly following the context or not? Right. So in a way, actually, this also goes back to the trust, right? A lot of enterprises are feared of the whole hallucination aspect. But we, with the metric approach, almost think about like a backbone of guiding, not just rules now, right? A backbone of how to guide the LLMs. So you have exact output that you're looking for. And that's why many of the regulated customers that we work with, they love this kind of approach. It's not just like a wrap around package to control something. We actually go underneath. And I think the lessons that we use the analogy of like the lie detection, thing is we actually understand the underlayer of how the LLM behave, and we making changes from that angle. So just one add on that.
That's a fascinating insight, Steven. And to me, this is about co-creation with an enterprise customer. It's not about you offering just the product. There is so much deeper knowledge that you've gathered over the years, which potentially cannot all be translated by just handing over a product. Probably it's a mix of your expertise with the product that you offer. Can you talk us through this co-creation experience with customers?
Oh, absolutely. I think that's actually one of the fundamental issues that I'm seeing a lot of the customers I work with in the past. First off, I think it's really good to like quickly just like a bias of action, right? A lot of teams just build it. All right, we have the data, we have the technology. But when it comes to kind of the larger adoption, because yes, assume you could prove a POC, but if you start thinking about a scale as an organization, you actually have to really align with the processes an expectation, even like we talked about, like different departments could have a different expectation in terms of what good looks like, right? So that's why I think fundamentally when you are starting with the journey of co-creations, your questions, I think there's like kind of like three fundamental areas that we work with. First is obviously we look into kind of the discovery and assessment. So when in this stage is more about not just understanding what the data that you have, but you're actually assessing, aligning what is the actual business goals that you have, objective, versus what is the actual use cases. Like, for example, one of my customers that, like in the finance teams over the years, they talk about, hey, you know what? We're actually spending 40% of my time and a team of 10 people of just doing data chunking, giving people insight. Yes, that sounds obvious, but then if it's one of those things where I think the key thing is that when you are discovering and assessing, you have to focus on where's the most value in terms of for the business, right? So that's one key. And the second piece is when it comes down to kind of value mapping of where the kind of most value that of the type of use cases that you're tackling. I think in this particular area, it's really focused on like what is actually the biggest impact that you're actually getting, not just from a POC perspective. How do you start aligning of the work that you do could be make it applicable for a lot of different organizations? So like, for example, I mentioned about some of the regulatory business. So the way we positioning is when we actually work on a particular use case, that foundation actually could be leveraged across different departments. Are you able to start mapping this same capability that could be utilized across different departments? That's why I think some terms been throwing around is like AI factory. A lot of people say it, but how you actually do it, right? That's why part of what we do as a product, we offer that data layer. You could build whatever you want, right? Then different department, you could just focus on what you're good at, which is building a great experience and great product or data products, right? So that's the other aspect. And then lastly, maybe I'll pan it on to Victor a little bit, is about the measurement, the metric side of things. What is the most important? Because everybody could build a POC. Everybody could build an agent around. But how do you build out high quality and using and measuring in a way that is not just from a business context, but also from a technology context? That will be the other angle of how we are co-creating with customers.
Yeah, and I again, like coming from my kind of engineering background, I think so. Right now, the adoption of AI agents has started. We can see it; it's tangible, it's here. But it's still it's not in its pure form. It's like we are trying to just replace like a particular parts, like figure out how to fit basically the AI agents into current processes. And I think that's where things kind of change a little bit, because you need to. With AI, you need to change the process and make it around the AI. And that's where the internal people in the organization, in the enterprise, are really important, because they're the ones that have to forge the process in their liking, with their outcomes and so forth. Where we come in is we actually give them the basic layer to utilize the data in order to shape that, and the ways to evaluate how well technical-wise the models were performing. And that gives them the tools more or less to shape this process around these agents and change maybe entirely how things and work underneath. Maybe not exactly the experience, maybe sometimes the user experience as well, but change underneath the process in order to get most value out of AI. Because one of the things in this report from MIT was that some of the failures were because the processes where you try to put the AI in, they're just not suitable for AI agents. So we need to work on that as well.
Yeah, and just to add on maybe a couple of points on here, I think one of the key aspect is also, you mentioned tackling your co-creation perspective. Obviously, we work with like yourself and system integrators, and also we have our own forward deployed engineers, and we work with customers, kind of walk them through along the way in this journey. I think that's the key, and because a lot of our customers, yes, they could have a team, but I think it's where do you prioritize their time to do best out of their skill set at, and what we offer is essentially taking a lot of this heavy lifting, like merging data together, or figure out what is the best way. And along the way, obviously, the adoption and onboarding process, we educate the end users of how to maintain and manipulate. Some of the works that we talk about from the metrics, outcomes, and output, and so forth. And that's why part of our core strategy it is working with partners, right? Because we are focused on the software itself, and that's why we work with you guys to kind of how do we do this more scale for our customers.
No, and I think as we began to understand you as a company and your product, it was so clear for us in HumBot where the complement is.
Yeah.
For us, we focus on scaling human expertise.
Yeah.
But then the human expertise, as we add into HumBots, needs to be scaled with a lot of enterprise context and knowledge. Yeah. Sometimes looking beyond the enterprise to global context, like the best practices. And that's where leveraging the strengths of your product to bring those knowledge sets within our product journey and our execution journey was probably a big disintermediation that we saw in the way we can deliver value to our customers. So clearly in that, as I was hearing you, I was thinking about this journey and saying, okay, now this particular partnership is meant for agentic execution. It's not the traditional ways of how we would have mapped our product capabilities on a standard workflow where there are human handoffs on a workflow. So I think that's a point well captured. But I'm just curious, when do you have that conversation with customers? Do you have this conversation to say, you need to reimagine workflows for the agentic world after you've done the first production deployment or even before?
That's a very good point. So since these things are kind of new, I would say like more or less this year, the adoption has started to happen more seriously. Because of the situation, these conversations now come after successful POC, maybe one use case already in the in production. That's where we start discussing, okay, so look guys, like if you actually change a little bit the process here and there, move these people that are doing currently a few things in the process to do something else, like for example, enriching the data or some other areas in the process, then the value will be actually much higher and we can scale even to more use cases. So right now it's following conversation, but I envision that in the next year or so, when more POCs get into production and people start seeing how they are deployed, I mean, this knowledge will kind of grow a little bit and we will be able to start with these conversations already. At least that's my thinking there.
That's pretty much. I think it's conceptual. I think is similar grain. Is once you have kind of templatized what good looks like in a way, then of course you could start having those conversations early on in the cycle. But I do see one thing that like it's more not necessarily about the technology thing. It's more kind of the process, right? It emphasized one of the points that Victor was saying is do you really design a new process of your existing processes, or actually you should build around AI, right? Because like, for example, like where our background, like simply data validation, I'm sure each department across any enterprise, they have to do it, right? The traditionally is, all right, this is the data, there's a certain rule and schema you got to follow, and then you troubleshoot, right? That's still, I would say, majority of the world is how they're doing it. But when you're reimagining it with AI, is that, all right, we actually have a tool set that you could have, grow in a much more automated fashion that you could start linking all the relationship. And you will only actually, and we'll actually have a flag saying that, all right, these are the relationship or the score that's the highest in terms of the non, like troubleshooting with the relationship with data. Then you'll have a human to look into. So I understand it's very uneasy for people to rely on something, but that is the process that I think it requires some time for people to adjust, or even rethinking, or a lot of people using reimagining the process. But then, hey, again, I guess is at the end of the day is it does it really actually bring in value? And obviously in this case, we've seen a lot of customers, they could do a lot more. Like even the data engineering side, they don't have to do data validation. I'm sure they will be very happy. They don't have to take care of that component. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe I want to add here one more like visionary thing in a way. It's like So in my view, because there's very constant question about, okay, so would AI actually replace a lot of jobs, and what are we going to do in the future?
Yeah.
I mean, it's very sensitive, very hot topic in a way. And my view here is that actually we're going to change the way we interact with technology. I mean, before we were kind of deeply entrenched. We did a lot of stuff manually in order to move the wheel of technology going forward and extract the value. And that's fine, but it still doesn't scale well. And an interesting thing is, I think right now we can leave this moving of the wheel to the AI, but we should go as humans to kind of validate the results and make it check. And why this is a better process, I mean, we can look, unfortunately, I'm coming from technical background, so I'll give an example with a technical thing. We can look into, for example, how the machines before understand images. So they had to like split it into different layouts, then figure out like the different objects there and so forth. And after that, pull up together the whole scene. And there were a lot of humans involved into interpreting what objects are, defining these kind of things. But now with AI, things change to the point where the model can already suggest what is on the picture. So now you need much less effort to actually only review, is that on the picture or not? And if it's not, just give feedback to the AI, but not go and tweak each and every component and so forth. And that's a very interesting change. People would say, oh, but don't you need less humans for that? No, actually, you can scale to do much more things in that way. At least my view.
Indeed. Yeah. You can scale to a lot more problems with the same set of human capabilities we have. Yeah, exactly. I think that's exactly how we think as well. And yeah, in some respects, I see like companies like yourselves and ourselves, we have a weight on our shoulders because enterprises are trusting us with their outcomes. It's not an easy trust for them. So how do you kind of take them along in the journey and really engender the change that we think the future is towards? And on that note, I'm just curious, where do you find most resistance in your conversations? Which layer of a customer organization or which particular stakeholder sets are most skeptical when you go to meet customers?
Well, I can start with that. I think there are a couple of areas. One is definitely the compliance and governance department, right? Because as we all went through the past couple of years or so, they are actually the first defense of like, how is this going to be, managing my data and so forth. That's really kind of the one area that we see. But then again, it's about setting the right context with those departments, right? Because and that's one. But secondly, I also see obviously the data analytics side, right? Because there's a lot of the AI projects in general. You're asking a lot of demand from that team. And as we all know it, I mean, 85% of the company is not even on the cloud. And even the ones on the cloud, they may not have a very efficient data infrastructure to even get they're not all of them get into like this data mesh type of architecture or domain-driven architecture. So in a way, it's not easy to get that data out. So what that means, the resistance is not necessarily about the security and trust. It's more around the practicality, what's problem, right? Yeah. That in order to get to there. So in a way, I think the way I'm seeing things is the success of the companies is actually you need to formulate kind of this kind of virtual champions within organizations, right? So you need to have finance, you need to have compliance and security, and obviously data as well. And essentially, I think this is probably not the first time you're hearing it. Yeah. But the key thing is that you need to have multiple key stakeholders to drive like these forward, or else you could be stuck in just putting MSA together for 6 months and then the project drops. I mean, we see that all the time.
Exactly.
So anyway, that's kind of one.
No, I mean, that's a big call out for any customer, any product vendor selling to enterprises. Yeah. Cultivate champions.
Yeah, I have a second group, which is so the experts or like the people that actually work with the technology. And obviously the problem there is that that will require some change for the way they work. And there is a lot of kind of, thinking that that might affect even how many people still are left in that department. And I think that's something that people need to talk a lot more about. We see in some enterprises the issue that people very quickly want kind of reduce expert personnel because they put a lot of responsibilities on the shoulders of agents. But I think it's not as simple. There's a lot more to think about because, now we see the shift that, we want to rehire now some experts. I mean, I think that's one of the groups that resist the most, and they sometimes can even sabotage a little bit some of the experiments we do and so forth. But in reality, I think there needs to be much more conversations between the management, the supplier, and the experts, and to see what's reasonable. Because I think it's not that simple to just remove people and think that this optimization will just work.
100%. And so I would say if there is a mental model that I've heard in this podcast over and over is you need to do more with what you have in terms of human before you think of doing more with less humans. Clearly that's step one for you to fix. So maybe just going towards the end, and this is rapid fire on HumBot. You can take your time to think, but then give us short answer on looking forward. Where do you see the nature of knowledge work going in the few years?
I think from my perspective, the nature of work around knowledge will move a lot more towards AI suggesting stuff and presenting and representing knowledge in its own way and getting humans to understand better how to consume and orchestrate. I think that are my expectations. Right now, we're still deeply entrenched in how to unearth what we have stored as knowledge. I think that will be solved by the AI. But then we'll need to be able to critically think and validate what we get as suggestions, and of course orchestrate the knowledge and make new discoveries.
For me, I'm thinking more on the angle around how do we pair up with all these different tools, like different agents, right? I mean, we could all probably argue that there's going to be a lot more agents out there in the future. How do you start, like as a human expert, to pair up, like just a similar theme that we talk about with agents, in order to acquire different types of knowledge, that is extensions of what that the expert knows, or everyday human. That will be kind of how I think like from that angle. So essentially what that means is that the understanding of knowledge is, we as a human being in general, I think we should be able to really double click and triple click down of the knowledge because of the advancements and the pairing and when we're working with like agents and the new technology and AI.
That's excellent. And I think what a way to round up such an interesting conversation. Maybe what remains is just for me to thank yourself, Victor, and you, Steven, for such a great conversation. And I hope listeners have found those important mental models and key takeaways that you probably want to include in your product journey or in your go-to-market and positioning with enterprise buyers. It's not going to be easy, but the ride's going to be interesting. Thank you so much, Victor. Thank you, Steven.